Hey everybody, forgive me for the delay. Um, as you know, with this whole quarantine happening, uh, setup is not always uh, what you would have it to be. Some technical difficulties, and didn't want this to just be a regular. Um, did not just want this to be a regular conversation. Definitely wanted to make sure that it was under the brand of my Move Beyond the Block project. And so, uh, yeah, come on into the room. Still getting set up a little. But as we get set up, I do want you all to please share. We are about to have a conversation regarding this, where we are right now, as a community, where we are right now as a race of people, and getting very distinctive about exactly what that means. So, yeah, come in, please share this video. Invite people in. Also, am able to bring other people on camera with me. Sometimes it's even better to not just talk to you all, but talk with you all. So if that is something that interests you, you can inbox me. If you have my phone number, you can text me, and then I can send you the link so that you can join in. You won't be able to join in directly through Facebook. So once you have that, then, once you send it in, I can send you the link, and then you can join me. Yeah, it is Saturday. Today is May 30th. And May 30th comes, this May 30th actually comes one day and 99 years since the Tulsa race massacre that happened in Oklahoma. The Tulsa race massacre that was started by white citizens in Tulsa, Oklahoma, specifically Tulsa, in the Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, where white citizens in the neighboring cities and neighboring parts of that state and city founded that Black people who were self-established, who were self-sufficient, self-efficient, who practiced self-reliance and all of the principles of Kwanzaa, owning their own businesses, including dentistry practices and medical practice, including insurance companies, including banks, including all the grocery stores, including everything that would make our community self-sufficient. This massacre happened May 31st of 1921. So May 31st of 1921, for 24 hours, the Black community was under siege and was basically terrorized by white citizens. And it's interesting, let me take this off. It's interesting that now, as we see the unrest and the uprisings around the country today, that's been taking place since about Thursday evening. It's very interesting following the murders at the hands of police for, in the latest instance, George Floyd in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Prior to that, the death in the home that took Breonna Taylor, and other police murders of the young man who was in his home, who was killed by in the nighttime. Again, officers shot him and killed him, and that was less than a year ago. Let me make sure I'm getting all my names correct, because definitely want to be factual. Botham James, I'm sorry, that's who I was looking up. Botham James, who was murdered in his home, in his own home, again by police officers. And then you had right after that, another young woman, get her name, because we always forget their names. Tatiana Jefferson. So Tatiana Jefferson, Breonna Taylor, both in their own homes, Botham James, both in their own homes. Not even suspects for any crime, just in their homes, murdered at the hands of the police. George Floyd, allegedly over a $25 $20 counterfeit bill or $20 forged check, whatever it was, less than $30, his life was taken as the impetus of why his life was taken. Brutally, horrendously murdered. Not even having a bullet take his life immediately with little pain, but suffocated to death with a knee on his neck as he lay with his hands behind his back, handcuffed, as body weight is all over his body by 3 adult officers in different parts of his body. And so all of these things, as obviously we already know, everybody knows, all of these things have really come to a head. And if you and I can't think about, if we can't think about just going out of our homes, driving to wherever we're going, grocery shopping, dollar store, getting ice cream, if we can't believe that in our own homes, in our own beds, that we can be safe from rabid police officers, then we have to assert ourselves. And some people believe that if you go come shooting and killing in our community, then you will not leave. We will shoot and kill back. And so the conversation, the reason that I'm with you all and that I want to start talking to you all is because I've seen so many people on my timeline. I could just go down, and this is just social media, right? I can just go down on my own timeline, in my own newsfeed, I'm sorry, where someone mentions when will we start discussing when everybody else when we start discussing the murders in our Black communities. I've saw 2 people say that, 3 people say that on my timeline. These are not people that I talk to that I know outside of social media. These are not people I even have a direct one-on-one communication or relationship with. And so that should tell us something. But what I want to ask is the question about why the protest. I just emailed it. Did you get it? To your DJ B-side. The thing I want to ask everybody to consider is, why is it that we are at this place where we are blaming protesters for how they are feeling and for their actions during protest? And I want to know why we don't recognize what an uprising is and the difference between a riot. That has to be made clear. You have to know history. And I'm so afraid that people don't know history. I'm afraid that people don't read books, that every piece of information they get is secondhand and third hand and fourth hand. They have not looked at anything of their own and put it to any context. They will take a meme that is taken from a speech that was an hour long, and the meme only represents 5 seconds of that speech, and people will act as if they heard the whole speech for themselves. People will take memes of a sentence from a book, a 200-page book, and use that to justify, vilify, or shame something. And they haven't even read that book. People will take something that's posted on social media or something that they heard on the news and never have any context to it. If I speak about something, for me, I would like to know the basis and the context. So I'm going to read about it. I'm going to look it up. I'm going to try to find some sort of context around it. I'm going to try and find the nuance behind it. What exactly was the whole conversation? What exactly was the whole context? So today, the thing that is really perplexing to me is this whole notion of riots and uprising. A riot is what you see when, you all have seen it, when there's a sports event, right? And a team wins, and it's revelers and fans and supporters and fanatics are out in the street or afterwards, and they're having a great grand time, and they're tossing beers and beer bottles, and they're yoo-hoo-woo! They're yelling and doing different things like that. And at some point in time, they just start doing things like setting cars on fire and lighting up these Molotov bombs and throwing them, and tossing over cars and pushing each other, and sometimes they break property windows, and all because they're just in a revelry of excitement for the win that they've gotten from their team's win, or the disappointment. Or because it's Halloween, they do the streamers and they destroy property and everything. That is a riot. It has no real purpose or intent. It's just to expend energy, and it's just contagious because the revelry that everybody is caught up in. However, an uprising, which I don't understand. An uprising is actually when people have become fed up, when people feel as if they have no power against an oppressive system or government, when people are ready to overturn and overthrow. That is an uprising. It has a specific target. Whether that target is the government, whether that target is a corporation, whether that target is an entity, but it has a actual target. It's not just random. The people who are part of this uprising have a very clear reason for their cause of action. So it's not as if they just decided that they just go outside. There's an impetus for it. And so I just want us to be careful with the language. I just want us to be careful with the language that we choose to use when we start talking about riots and uprisings. And I'm sorry, I'm going on here just so I can see if you are talking or trying to talk to me. I just want to make sure that I'm responding to you and taking time away. I wanted to just show y'all some things. My books have been, my husband has been doing some cleaning, and so he has put my books all over the place. And I'm not used to not having my books like where I can get to them when I need to. But I just wanted to show some things. I'll give you one quick second. What is that? Bear with me, y'all, because I had to pull the books that I want to. Oh Lord, it's a lot. The books I have more, but these are books that I want y'all to. I just want us to read. I want us to read more, especially when we're going to start getting into conversations and trying to critique and judge, and just to have more of an insight. I want us to be able to do that, have insight, and do it from a factual standpoint, from a historical standpoint. So right now, because of COVID-19 and quarantine and shelter in place, and who knows for how long this will happen, but there are libraries all around the country who have offered up and opened up their collections for free rental. So you can read any book you desire. You can read it right now for no fee. You can go through anybody's autobiography for no fee. You don't have to be a member or show any ID to their as if you were, if you live, you don't have to live in the state of New York or the city of New York to take a book out of the New York Library, right? And so I'm just thinking about where we are now in these times, and people not understanding why people are uprising or why property is being destroyed. The first thing I want to say to those people who are questioning, that's so much better. The first thing I want to offer to the people who are questioning, what about black on black crime? I need you to understand something about black on black crime. I need you to know that black on black crime is a false narrative that somehow a lot of us black people have bought into, have allowed ourselves to believe in, and have rehashed it over and over again. The thing about it is that segregation forced many of us to be together, all of us to be together. And it forced us to have doctors and attorneys and judges and educators and along with saloon owners, that's what they called them back in the day, or lounges or supper clubs, and pharmacists, and the numbers runners, and the unemployed, the overeducated, the undereducated, the incarcerated, newly returned home citizen, everybody, the alcoholic, the recovered alcoholic, all lived in the same community. However, with integration and folks being able to move where they chose to move, and most of us believing that if we lived around white people, we would be accepted by white people, and we would be of the mind and assimilated, but that's a whole different conversation. So let me bring it back. But integration allowed us to just move about. And so when we move about, the people who are left are the people who more than likely are surrounded by poverty because they cannot live in these other spaces or these other places. They are also the same people who don't have access to education, the same level of education. So when you think of it, people who don't have a education, don't have very many options, proliferation of drugs, proliferation of just trauma after trauma, and systemic violence and systemic injustice. Those people all live in one place. There go violence. And violence of any kind is always perpetuated on the people in closest proximity to you. So if your neighbors are all black, if you're a criminal, when you commit a crime, who's your victim going to be? If you live in an all-white community and you are a criminal, more than likely when you commit a crime, your victim is going to be white. It's not a race thing. It's a matter of economics. It's a matter of injustices and poverty. But we don't understand that, and we want to make it a race thing. And if that were the case, then in affluent black neighborhoods, you would have the same amount of crime. So it should tell you that it's not a black thing. It should tell you that black people are not more susceptible or prone to crime than anyone else. It should tell you that there are other factors that should be considered before you use self-hatred and those type of things by saying, what about black crime? Because the same thing that's fueling this murder of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor, the murder of Atiana Jefferson, the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the murder of Mike Brown, the murder of Sean Bell, Oscar Grant. We can go on, Trayvon Martin. We can go on and on and on, which is sad that we can name those names. But the same impetus for those crimes are the very same ones. If we were to get to the bottom of that and we resolve that, can you put that over here for me? If we resolve that, then we will resolve this thing that you're talking about. Why are black people killing each other? If you got to the things that systematic injustice and white supremacy fuels, you get to the bottom of black on black crime, or quote unquote black on black crime. But I'm going to give, because this is about us reading, right? Us reading so we have an understanding, us reading so that we are not just saying things and just having this whole commentary, offering commentary to folks without some nuance or context. I just wanted to tell you people who are asking a question, well, what about black on black crime? That I want you to read Dr. Alvin Poussant's work. Please read his work. Read his work, and then after you've read his work, I want you to read Dr. Naeem Akbar. And after you read his work, then I want you to read Dr. Carl Bell. And if you can't get to their books, at least watch some videos, long videos. Don't watch the 5-minute videos with snippets. I want you to watch real long videos where they are giving very nuanced and thorough thought to questions about black on black crime. And then after you've done that, then if your questions are still the same, if you still have, well, what about black on black crime during the times when people are protesting state-sanctioned murder, then you are free to go. You can go, pass go, don't go to jail. You can go and you can talk about whatever you want. But if you've not read those things, if you have not in any way before someone starts talking about protests, if that hasn't been an interest of yours prior to that, then I just think you should refrain from those conversations. And I say refrain because when you, whatever you are asking or inquiring, it's just facetious. You don't really want to know the answer. You're just bringing up things to be facetious and to be really to practice self-hate. So I'm going to go over those books again. You could please read Dr. Alvin Poussant. He's a psychiatrist. He has a number of books that you can read. You can read Dr. Naeem Akbar, another psychologist that you can read, and that will help you. And also Frantz Fanon, who would answer that question, but so many other questions about white supremacy and about the fight for just the placement of black liberation and ideology and policy and politics, right? So we're gonna move on from those people. I don't want to give them too much time, but the self-hate is real and it's so sad because y'all, what I believe about all of this, from these state-sanctioned murders, which, by the way, have been happening since they came to Africa, knocked out our teeth, skinned us alive with bamboo bark, forced us into our feces and menstrual blood and vomit and urine, and endured that heinous, horrific transatlantic that alone is the start of the barbarity that we are facing today. And that's just the reality. And I don't think we can go and start saying, well, what about the Africans that was fighting each other? That's how you sound. Well, what about the tribes that were fighting amongst one another? What about them? That's exactly what you sound like when you start trying to justify why we should ignore inter-community violence when you don't even try to make allowance or understand or resolve the poverty and the systemic injustice and the structural violence that is facing those communities. Let me see if you all have any questions. So the next thing I see people talking about that I wanted to address was this whole thing of property and this value we put on properties and this value that we put on businesses and companies in our communities that have not bettered our community. And as soon as there is an uprising, the conversation is you're burning down your own community, which I find laughable. Here's something that my brother Toussaint stated earlier. I saw him post on Facebook and I hadn't gotten around to responding as I was out, but I want to share with you something he wrote earlier, which I thought was so profound. And he gives a long list of community. He says, definition of community. And the definition, I mean, this thing is broad. It's very broad. It talks about community being a unified body of individuals, such as a people with common interests living in a particular area. Or more broadly, the area itself. So that would be geographically the neighborhood, right? And the problems of a large community, a group of people with common characteristics or interests living together within a larger society. A community of retired persons could be a community. A monastic community, or a body of persons of common and especially professional interests scattered through a larger society. So, like the technology community, or the what do they call it? The IT community and people that are in tech, right? That would be a community, especially, let's just say, Simi Valley or San Francisco, right? Goes on. Talk about different levels, social state or condition. The school encourages a sense of community in its students. Joint ownership, likeness, community interest, or fellowship, or society at large, the interest of the community. And Toussaint asked the question, well, which version of community is being destroyed that has got some of you so upset and angered about? Which version of community that I just named off are you upset about that's being destroyed? Because a business is not a community. That's not burning down your own community. Because here's the question, here's the thing. If the business was so vital to the community, then the people in the community, remember people, because people haven't said anything about people. They want to know why you burning down your own community, and they only talking about businesses. Nobody's house has been caught on fire. Nobody's personal person has been caught on fire, but we're really concerned about businesses. So let me ask this. What businesses have on a whole educated or invested in the development, the full development of their employees, so that said employees and the community around said business or corporate company can employ more than just as a way to make minimum wage, or in a way can just stay in a job? Have they invested in the growth and development that allows them themselves to buy and own and create their own businesses? Or is the business just there to provide a job to people who then only serve the business? Is the business providing education for parents and mothers on cooking skills? Is the business helping parents and mothers grow fresh food for themselves? Is the business providing any type of home ownership incentive? Is the business providing any kind of school and education tuition reimbursement? Is the business providing any kind of kickback to the local community schools, so that the local community schools that's 6 blocks away from the business is not vacant because it was closed due to underperforming teachers and education? Because that's a community. A business that's just sitting on a block is not a community. A business that's just taking up space on the block, and yeah, it employs some folks, but does it empower some folks? Because that's the difference. Because guess what? That business that will definitely be okay. I've not heard a business owner. In fact, I've heard several business owners that have stood with people who are protesting in the uprising say, don't worry about us, we will be okay. We stand against this injustice. I've heard more business owners saying that than people who ain't got nothing to do with the business worried about the business. And they're going to be okay. They're going to get insurance and they're going to do just fine. And the poor people that, that have to be employed by these places, the young people that need to be, they're going to get another job there too. But what's not going to happen is schools won't reopen, and the schools are closed before the riots or whatever you want to call it. The schools have been sitting vacant for years. And I haven't heard anybody marching or protesting that. People lost their home as banks and businesses were bailed out. And I ain't heard nobody say nothing about that as we ride through the hood and the community and see so many people who have lost their homes, parents and mothers who have had their homes for generations, raised up 2 generations in a home, lost their home on the back of Wall Street of 2008. And nobody's concerned about how that impacts the community then, but everybody is up in arms about what's happening when a business is burned down in a community. I just don't understand it. I don't understand the outrage. And so, again, I just ask you to read a little bit. Just read. And I don't mean read statuses on social media. I mean, pick up a book. So, as I said, when I pull these all together, these are just a few, because I said my husband got rid of the other ones. But these are the books I want y'all to read right now for that purpose. I want you to read, can y'all see that? I'm Not Your Negro by James Baldwin. Please read that. James Baldwin talks in that book. They pull parts of it. It was actually a motion. It was actually like a documentary piece that they pull of his reflections and his essays that he had. I want you to read that because he talks a lot about why the Negro, I'm not your Negro, why we have to have our sense of self and our sense of identity and our sense of community. He talks about the anger and the rage and why it is targeted towards white folks. He talks so much about a lot, but a lot of the questions that people have about why, it can be answered in that. Let me see what else. And even though this is not a book about rioting or uprisings, it does tell you how things happen and why things come to a head and why people then take to the streets and burn things and have this rage and this fury that they unfurl. And if you read The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell, you kind of understand how things come to be, where they just come to a head, where they've been boiling, it's been brewing for a long time, and it could be success or violence, but why things come to a head. It gives you a good reason for psychology. And this book, John Hope Franklin. Now everybody loves to say they went to John Hope, right? 55th, Inglewood. Everybody love to brag about it, but read his work. This one is called Mirror to America. This is just one of his works. And this is talking about his how he came to be a civil rights icon, but also the research and the history and the things he learned about as we fought for civil rights, what that path was like. Let me see what else. I really need y'all to understand, because it's not for you. I know you all watching. I know y'all already know this, but I want you to share this with somebody else, because I know we need folks that need to be reminded. This is a good one. Root Shock by Mindy Thompson Fuller. Now, Mindy Thompson Fuller wrote a couple of books. Her books mostly deal with gentrification and also just about Black middle class, which some people identify with. And there's more of those who identify as middle class who are really concerned about the community. Businesses burn. But it talks about just how much the divestment from communities leave it susceptible to this type of uprising. Because when resources are not evenly divided and equity is not equity and parity in education, it's not equity and parity in housing value or housing stock or real estate stock, when it's not equity and parity in job and income, when those things happen and then their community is just left with this inequitable resources. They don't have enough food, enough housing to support all the people in an area, enough transportation to support all the people in the area, enough money and funds for all the people in the area. That's what you get. Here's some more books here. Black Feminist Anthropology, and this is talking about the theory, politics, and praxis. And the fourth is by Janetta B. Cole. Y'all know who she is. Janetta B. Cole has headed up been the president of a lot of our HBCUs. And then it was edited by Irma McLaren. So that's another book. And then for those of you who love to ask about why people burn and stuff and that sort of thing, I want you to read Brittany Cooper's. I'm sorry, y'all. I read books and they get destroyed because I'm pushing pages and everything. But Beyond Respectability, the Intellectual Thought of Race Women. This book is newer. But she takes a reflection across the generations of women who were considered to be race women, from Ida B. Wells to Julia Cooper, Toni K. Bambara, just about Mary Church Terrell, just about any Black woman who was a race woman who was a politically minded and social activist. She talks about that in that book. It's some more I could go on. I'm going to put these away. But yeah, y'all, we've got to understand that we've got to know our history, know our patterns, know things that are happening, because they're not just coming out of thin air. These are things that are taking place, that uprisings happen, and people haven't experienced. Some of you all have never experienced an uprising. Some of you all have lived a whole 25-year history of not having seen an uprising. Why? Because each time there is an uprising, there are concessions made. There's policy. There's some resources. Something is done to alleviate the pressure that was out for the first uprising. And I hope, though, that we learn now to not release the pressure. Because what's happened in the past is we've been appeased, or we've been so guilted and shamed into not burning down our own communities that we release the pressure, and then they think that they can take a few tokens and make life good for a few tokens, and then the rest of us are left suffering. And the problem is that those who are tokens forget what it was like before the uprising for themselves. And they find that the comfort that they're living in is the one that they want. And they want everybody else to shut up, because that comfort gets shook when people step up and start shaking and rattling the cage. Let me see. Just trying to make sure I'm not missing anybody. I also wanted to talk about what our ideal is for liberation. What is it? I asked this question before, and I'm asking it again. What is the idea for liberation? You know, is liberation to have your own shack on the plantation? Is liberation to get the pass to go to the next plantation and be free to go to the next plantation and come back by curfew? Is the liberation just to get your freedom papers while your family is in bondage, but you can go and visit your family? Like, what is the liberation we trying to get to? Is the liberation you trying to get to freedom, where you don't have to answer to being on a plantation, where you can leave the plantation and take your entire family with you and not be dependent or beholden to the plantation owner? Because sometimes I get confused about what it is that people believe that we are fighting for. And I want you to also understand about the temper of a protest. If you've ever been to any kind of protest, and I shouldn't say been to it, because being to one and attending a protest is different than organizing or being a part of an organized body that protests. And so if you're part of an organized body or an organizer who actually organizes protests, then what you'll understand is that training Training goes into that. You don't just go out in the street with a sign and just go out with a bullhorn and a sign and be like, I'm about to protest. That's not how it happens. There are meetings. People are put on certain positions. You are given phone numbers to call for legal support. You're given phone numbers to call. This is back in the day when it wasn't cell phones everywhere. You're given a phone number to call. You have to memorize that number in case you go to the police station and you only get that one phone call. You don't call your parents or anything. You call a person that can get you out of jail by getting there to pay for you to get out of jail, who will then call your parents or call whomever else. And you submit the numbers of people closest to you. There's so many different layers of training that goes into protest. You understand how to do a human link. You understand how to recognize provocateurs and agents. And see, what people who are protesting, who are just attending a protest, which if you organize, then you already know. Just like Dr. King knew it, just like Malcolm X knew it, people are going to attend a protest or anything where they see a crowd, they're going to come running into the crowd. They don't have to know what it's for. But somebody then says, well, we're here to, that's what you start promoting and chanting and passing out your literature to let people know, because the protest is to educate, to bring about awareness. That's what it's for. So the more people that come, the more you can get your word out about why you're protesting. And then somebody be like, you know what? I never thought of that. You're right. I am going to protest that my school closed down and 54 others closed down as well. Or you're right. We should have fresh fruit in our communities. And we shouldn't have this big box here and closing up all of our small businesses. So I'm going to protest with you. Or you damn right. We shouldn't settle for somebody killing us by putting their foot on our necks and their knee in our necks for over 10 minutes while we die slowly of a death, crying out for our dead mothers. So I am going to protest. So everybody that comes to a protest isn't a part of the actual organizers. So yes, you're going to have some people that's just there just to watch. The hope is that they feel moved in some kind of way, that they now are aware of something that they weren't aware of before, and that this sparks some kind of interest to them, that they begin to then look into it for themselves and then start joining something. Because most times you're going to have committees and people there who have membership and other things to tell them about the meeting that they have next week, and they'll come to it. But this is the problem. A lot of y'all look at everybody at the protest as the organized protesters, and that is not what it is. The organized protesters are also aware that people are joining that they don't know and are not a part of the movement. But also because COINTELPRO is a very real thing, and CIA is a very real thing, and this is what happens. We are already told this. Lou Myers schooled us to this. Those of us who went to Jenna, those of us who protested and did Day of Decency, those of us who protested against violence against women, those of us who protested against the Nigerian girls, those of us who went to Gina, those of us who were protesting when apartheid, all of those things, the Rodney King beating, those of us who were involved at that time, when Stokely Carmichael came down to SIU, for those who were a part of organizing it, and he said to us at that time, as soon as you attend a meeting of any kind, that's a public meeting, that's about bettering and liberating your people, the FBI already got somebody sitting right next to you, taking down the names and the license plates of everybody that rolls up in there. Now, you can believe that it's conspiracy theory or not, but that's what you're trained to know. Lou Myers told us, anybody that's out there saying, screw the pigs, and they real loud and real bombastic, and they want to get up in the police's face and push the police and antagonize, more than likely, that's an agent. They start breaking stuff and setting stuff on fire and doing all this kind of stuff. That's an agent. And the organized body tries to stay away from that person because they know. And then that person comes into the meetings and is disruptive in the meeting as well, pitting people against each other. See, Y'all not, people don't know. People who don't do it, they don't know, and they come with all this this bickering and commentary and bantering on social media. And all I'm just saying is, y'all, know some history, please. Read. Everything that we're going through is in a book. In a book. It's all in a book. When I think of Afeni Shakur in the book, I don't know what I did with Afeni's book. But even Afeni's book talked about how she was a part of the New York 21 and the things that they did to infiltrate the New York 21 and the things to look out for. And she talked about marching and protesting. And she talked about also coordinating free food and the breakfast club and the sickle cell anemia, all the stuff that the Panthers were doing. She talked about that. So everything that we doing, everything that we need, it's in a book that an ancestor wrote. Everything they went through, they wrote an autobiography for it, or somebody wrote their biography and talked to them about it and wrote for it. Ella Baker has books you can read about. Ella Baker, who is the mother of civil rights organizing, you can read about that. You can read Fannie Lou Hamer's books. You can watch their interviews. Barbara Jordan, if we want to talk about, everybody has a role, right? Everybody has a role. Fannie Lou Hamer was uneducated. Well, I shouldn't say uneducated. She was not traditionally educated, right? A field worker, a sharecropping woman. But Fannie Lou Hamer did what she had to do. Ella Baker did what she had to do. Barbara Jordan did what she had to do. Very three distinctly different type of women in three distinct different roles. Barbara Jordan was a politician, a legislator. Ella Baker was an educator and involved in SNCC and all kind of organizing that she did with research and things like that. And Fannie Lou Hamer was on the ground grassroots. Three distinctly different women rocking it and doing what they had to do. Now, would Barbara Jordan be out in a protest where people were burning buildings and businesses and cars? More than likely not. But would she have understood it? And would she have been working on a policy that they were out in the streets for? When she heard her brothers and sisters for what they were fighting for, would she have gone into action with her colleagues to say, this is why they're fighting, and these are the laws we can build so that we can change it to make the circumstances better? Every one hand washes the other. Every action builds the fire. Your stick, because you do it your way and you refuse to bust a window open of a company. I refuse to bust a window open of a company, but I'm certainly not going to sit and befuddle and ask why somebody is doing it. I'm not going to sit and judge them about why they chose that action. What I am going to do is see what I can do from my role to get to the goal, which is to stop police brutality, to stop this inhumane treatment that we've received in this country since the day they put us on the ships. The savagery that we've had to face. And as Ella Baker said, all we are asking for is human dignity and freedom. And the freedom that Ella Baker was asking for, I do not believe it was the freedom for a longer leash. I don't believe she was asking for us just to do just enough to get rid of the worst evil. I don't believe that. I believe that there is no lesser evil. Evil is evil. And the lesser evil may give you a longer leash, but the leash still can be pulled. And I don't know about you, but I don't want the kind of freedom that I have any kind of leash on me that can snatch me up and tell me to sit, stay, or anything else, or lie down with their knee in my neck. That's not the kind of liberation that I want. And you watch how vehemently people try to protect their right to have you on a leash. That should tell you something. They get organized to stop our organizing. And I mean that on any level. The thing that America has to recognize is that this is not at the end of the day really race. Because see, they change the constructs as they get power. Those who are in power, they change the constructs to keep us under them. So it'll start off as, you're indentured, you're a foreigner and you're indentured. But indentured people can get rights and get free, and then it leaves them in a lurch. So now they need you to just be forever in their under their wing, because that's the only way their economy can continue uninterrupted. They need you home with the children, so they start doing this whole gender role thing, right? It serves their purpose. But what people need to understand is that Black people being the slaves is becoming much more of a headache. The new Jim Crow is becoming much more of a headache to maintain, because you Negroes don't know how to suffer silently. Y'all want to start burning stuff down and speaking out and all this other crap. So we can erase that whole thing, and we can pit you all against one another. But at the end of the day, it's really about poverty and keeping you under them as billionaires. And too many people mistake what middle class is, when at the end of the day, when you look at the wealth distribution, if you consider yourself to be Black and middle class, if right now you cannot say that 2 generations from you or 1 generation from you is set for life, meaning their college education, 2 degrees of education, their houses, their homes are fully paid for because of your wealth, then you are not middle class. Sorry, I know that's a disappointment. I know a lot of people like to claim that they're middle class. You may not be in poverty, but you not middle class. If you at any point in time missing 3 paychecks can send you to the unemployment line, sorry, you're not middle class. So the conversation has to be that, and it's not even about, at that point, that's white folks. It's a whole lot of white people that had to call that unemployment number before some Black people did. And let's talk about that. But we ourselves, we accept the narrative that we're the poor people. We accept the narrative that we are the ones who are destroying our own communities. We accept all these different things about us that leave us, that pinpoint us as having lack. So let me start watching some of the questions, and you all, and like I said, if you have my number and you want to come on with me, then just send me a text and I will send you the link. Or actually, yeah, I'll send you the link through Facebook. I'm not on Facebook, so I can't actually see. This is a third party, so I can't really see your questions. But I would just like to know, like, what is it that, and I know people won't admit it, but if you were somebody who was saying any of that stuff about Black on Black crime, or, why are people burning down, I hope that this has changed your mind. Not that it's changed your mind that you won't think it anymore, but just change your mind to be open to that it's not all black and white. There are reasons and there are levels to everything. And one thing I pray is that at least you will read. All of us, not just you, but me too. We will continue to read. There are books that I still need to read. I've only read 2 of Dr. King's books. I need to read more of Dr. King's books. I've not read all of the books that I want to read either. We should constantly be developing our minds, constantly seeking to sharpen our intelligence and our understanding. And read for understanding, not read to just know more than somebody else, but read for true understanding, because when we read, we really do get a sense of our own purpose. You find yourself within those books, the role you can play. And it may not be the actual author of that book, right? But you may identify somebody that the author is talking about and saying, you know what, I can do that too. Maybe Ida B. Wells is talking about Mary Church Terrell. And maybe you don't want to do what Ida B. Wells did. Ida B. Wells was a different kind of sister. She was a radical sister. She was not playing games with them. And some of the women who were more respectable and did things in a more respectable way started to kind of, they started to kind of, I guess, like, you know, kind of ostracize her because she didn't fit into this neat package. Some women were Black and affluent. You know, they came from very prestigious families, and they could do socialites and stuff like that, and they just gave money, and that's fine too. Everything is fine, but what's not fine is anti-Black self-hate. That's not fine. That's never fine. It's never fine to put more into questioning the validity of outrage than it is into questioning the whole the impetus and the oppression. And Dr. King said something like that. You questioning more about the injustice of an uprising than you are questioning the reason for the uprising. Come on. I get it, but what about? No, you don't get it then. If you're saying, but what about, then you don't get it. You don't get it. Let me see. How do we talk to our community who insist on demonizing demonstration and protest and focus on the looting instead? You know what, Shelly? I wish you were you, because I saw you make some statements earlier, Shelly, and I would really like for you to come on. TJ, you too. I'm about to send y'all both this link, okay? Thumbs up if that's cool with y'all. Or a heart or something. Oh, I don't think I can see a heart on here. Okay, I'm about to send y'all this link, and I want you to come on, Shelly, because that question that you just asked is a very valid question. I have an answer for you. People ain't gonna like my answer, but I'm gonna send it to you and TJ right now. If y'all get it and y'all cool, come on. If you're not, I understand. TJ, when you come on, we could talk about Juneteenth and what we doing in Chicago for Juneteenth. All right, y'all got the link. If you're coming on, just click. All you gotta do is click it, and then you'll be on. So Shelly was just asking. Shelly was just asking about what do we say to people who, I inboxed it to y'all. Shelly was just asking, what do we say to people who insist on demonizing the demonstrations and protests and focus on the looting instead of uplifting the need to bring justice? How do we stay patient with their anti-fight efforts? I say we, Mayor Lori Lightfoot had a prolific word the other day, and I would like to repeat it. It starts with an F and it ends with a U. That's how I feel. Anybody that's going around demonizing protesters and demonizing the effort for liberation starts with the F, ends with the U. I'm not even going to waste my time on them. They've already been allowed to have their minds set and conditioned and be programmed. So let them. You think Dr. King, you think everybody was cool with the nonviolence that Dr. King, the protest Dr. King's had? No. Black people were some of the main people that were against him. Church leaders, some of the main people, especially here in Chicago. Chicago is one of the hardest cities to deprogram. And that's a fact. If you've done any organizing of any kind, it's a who sent you city. And the who sent you, the circle is very tight. So I don't know, Shelly, if you still on, or if you're not, but if you still on, if you go on your inbox, you got a message from me that gives you a link. Click on that link and then you can come on, because I love what you said on somebody else's page. One of these ignoramuses who keeps throwing out things. There you go. Hey, mama. I'll bring you on. Hey.
Hey, girl. I'm just listening to you getting so like hyped and just you speaking all truth. When I was working with the organizing committee, a community, it was just a lot of training and being patient and waiting for the right moment and not feeding into the agitation of the moment, but really staying on message and staying focused. And you speaking the truth. I think for me, I'm just getting so frustrated with all of the voices from our community. Like, I don't really care about other communities and what they're saying because I don't really expect them to understand, to be honest. But I feel like the voices in our community concern me because it's like you said, that it's just rooted in not really understanding history and not understanding why we're silenced.
Yeah, and like I don't know if you heard me when I said it, but F you. Just like Lori Lightfoot said, starts with the F, ends with the U. We don't have time. We don't have time. This is one thing. We are 60 years out from the civil rights movement, right? The height of the civil rights movement. We're 60 years out. 60 years out from the death of Dr. King, you know.
Who they murdered.
Who was murdered. And his daughter says it, right? His
daughter
says that the police murdered him.
Right.
So we're 60 years out from that. These are the same conversations that they were having as well. Everybody was in support of Dr. King, and then people weren't. They weren't happy with Dr. King. They weren't happy with Malcolm X. They weren't happy with Stokely Carmichael and the Black. Right. They're never going to be happy because as close as they can get to the white man's water, the less thirstier they think they're going to be. But they don't understand that too much of any water, you can die. You can die from drinking the wrong kind of water. Lead in the water. You can die from drinking too much. Your body can be too consuming water. So those are people that you cannot waste energy on. I slipped up, which I try not to do, and commented on someone's page, their post. But I do that. The only time I do that is when I believe that that person is not they're not involved and they just don't know. They're just plain ignorant. And when I say ignorant, I don't mean ignorant from the place of they're not smart, because they're very intelligent people. But I just don't think that they're connected to organizing or movement. So just to educate those kind of people, I will.
Yeah.
But the commentary that you were commenting on earlier, I'm not giving I'm not giving energy to that. You know why? Some of those people are opportunistic people, and they're just waiting for their moment that they can say something, and it's like, aha, and they're pushed into a conversation where people are looking at them as a thought leader. If you follow those kind of people, you'll see that they have bombastic commentary for everything.
Right.
They're agitators.
Yeah, it's been disappointing to see some people that I know a few years ago were a part of the movement, and they would be the ones who would be like, don't get caught up in that. We got to protect you. I don't want to see you go to jail. I know you got kids. I want to. And now they're saying things that you're just like, are you bought? Like, are you getting paid off? What's happening here? Because this is the Twilight Zone. Like, I would have never thought some of these things that are going to come out of these people's mouths. So,
well, you gotta understand that people are looking for opportunity. They're looking for power. They're looking for some significance and some relevance. And so, whatever they believe will give them the relevance and the significance, that's what they're going to do. Also, you gotta look at where people were the last time, which is unfortunate. The last time that people were moved to do some deep protest work like what we're seeing now, like a real uprising, was Laquan McDonald. And Laquan McDonald was how many years ago? And so I think Tupac said it best, and it's the truth. And this is how we evolve as a community anyway. At a certain age, you fearless, you out in the streets, you protesting, you on the front line, you going hard in that regard. That's mostly happening before you're 30. That's mostly happening before your career is good. That's mostly happening before you have children. That's mostly happening before you have a home. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
On the line to lose as you become an adult and you move into a different phase, right? So you got to think, where were those people in that last fight? Were they still striving? Were they still trying to get into circles? Because here's another thing that I know. People fight hard against the system or talk about not being at the table, but they really just want to be at the table. They don't want to shift tables. They don't want to move the menu off the table. They don't want to do a picnic style. They want to keep the table. They just want to be at the table. And so if they can cause any kind of thing just to be at the table, this all good for them.
Yeah, you challenged me, honestly, like just hearing what you were saying, like are we fighting for a shack on the plantation? Or like what? I think we all really do need to evaluate that. Like, what is it that we really want to see? I mean, everything that brought me to this fight honestly came out of a selfish place for myself because of my own experience of being brutalized by the police and losing my child. Like that made me just so angry and aware of how anybody can be affected. You know, I think there was always this mentality in my head that you had to do something to be targeted. You had to be oppositional or obnoxious with cops to get mistreated. And then I found myself just really at the hands of a very uncontrolled, undisciplined person telling me he would, you know, ruin my life. And it made me very keen to how much we are potentially victimized and have to survive in this climate of brutality. So that's what brought me to it. But there's just so many other aspects to not just the brutality, but just the injustice and the oppression. It's economic, it's, you know, it's in our educational system, it's in housing, it's in healthcare. There's so many layers to how we are marginalized as a group and as individuals. But, you know, when you really start to unpack all that, it's like, what we got to really decide, like, what is it that we want for the community and for ourselves and our families.
And I want to hold a space for you in that, and the loss of your baby and their life, and just that traumatic experience. Because we don't give ourselves permission to grieve through that. We don't give each other the grace to say, "Damn, that happened to you," right? Even in the dead, even Laquan McDonald, even Rakia Boyd, we don't hold the space for their life. We have anger because we have. I mean, it is righteous anger, but we don't hold the space to grieve what those final moments were for him. We are upset because of what we saw, but what was it like for him? What was it like for her, Rakia Boyd? What was it like for you in that moment? What was it like for me as a 17-year-old standing 5 feet high, 80 pounds soaking wet, and having a 6-foot cop over 280 pounds slap me across my face so hard that I flew into a gate? What is it like for my daughter to be hounded and hunted down into her school and followed and ridiculed and held, you know, with all these police surrounding her into her school? What does that feel like for that person? And I think the reason that people like you and I are committed to this, and the reason that people are a part of organizing, is because we have had those experiences. And the people who don't understand it, they're removed from it. They may see it happen as they're driving by in their car. They may see, you know, somebody pulled over and lights flashing, but in their mind, because it's not them, well, what did they do? Well, I'm so glad I ain't driving around with all them people. It's not a visceral reaction because it's not them. If their families are all in great housing and you know, they family don't have to worry about mold on the wall, or, you know, a landlord that's not fixing pipes or rats running through, that's not a concern for them. If they don't know anybody that's got a drug addiction or alcohol addiction, and or if they just wish that if they were somebody that had it, in a child of somebody that had it, and they haven't dealt with the pain of it, then they think, if my mama hadn't been a drug addict, then my problems wouldn't have happened. So I just won't do drugs. And people should just not do drugs. And then they don't have to worry. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
People are disconnected from pain, which is why they don't understand why people are so passionate about it. But I'm passionate about it, and I get teary-eyed because I'm passionate about it, because I don't want, that's not a life that anybody else. I never in a million years thought that what I experienced, my own daughter would 30 years later experience. I never thought that would happen to her.
Yeah.
I sent her to a school, you know, a diverse school, you know, thinking that, you know, she ain't got to worry about violence and getting into fights and that sort of thing. But I forgot about the damn police. So I'm going to take a question from Dr. Kisha Roberts-Tabb. She says, the fact is, as a people, we are not ready for, baby, she about to say a word. We are not ready for a televised revolution. It's easier to condemn those who are willing to stand up to hide their own fear.
I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna get out of your way, Lakeisha, but I'm still listening and watching. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Yep. Yes, Dr. Kisha Roberts Tab, absolutely. I just think that the fact of the matter is, when people are not connected to it, they don't see it for themselves. There's a way for them. And then too, y'all, it's also we got to be real about the trauma and the wounds that we have. And so I try to remember that as I get pissed at people. I have a short patience for people, and then I have to remember, I used to be proud to say I don't suffer fools. But everybody has, I try to remember, there's space for grace for all of us. And all of us are dealing with some level of trauma and pain that the way we process things keeps us from having that pain. Some of us don't want to re-trigger that pain. Some of us don't want to revisit what it was like when we had to live in the hood, right? Some of us don't want to revisit what that feels like when we were in a place where poverty and we couldn't, where they couldn't eat. Maybe their mama didn't have money or their daddy wasn't, whatever it is, they've insulated or believe that being insulated or assimilating would save them from that. And so what I know is that people believe that if Black folks act up, then somebody gonna be able to look around and say, you Black too. Like they thought they were hiding in plain sight that they were Black. And when y'all start acting up, you Negroes start acting up, then it's gonna blow their cover. And somebody gonna look up at their job and say, oh my God, you are Black too. They thought they was hiding the whole time, but I don't know. It's amazing to me that people don't recognize. I mean, I just can't. My family, my in-laws, a huge family. I have a lot of family on my father's side, my mother's side, my in-laws. And it's amazing to me that people don't recognize their own family members in certain situations. You know what I mean? I can't think of a single thing when President Obama at the time, when Trayvon Martin was murdered, and he said that Trayvon could be his son. I look at, my husband and I were talking today, I look at certain situations and be like, that could be any number of my relatives in any different situation. So that's why I think that for me, it's not hard for me to make the connection. It's not hard for me to feel in my heart when I see, when I remember my husband and I being home from college, and he had a car at the time that was a very popular car for young guys. He had a Monte Carlo Oldsmobile. And I just remember us being stopped all the time here in the city when we were home on break. And so dehumanizing, just no dignity for us. Having him get out, put his hands on the hood of a hot car, or having him sit there while they tear up the back of the car, because at the time the seat can come out, tearing up the back of his car, and then walking away like, okay, now fix it back and go about your business. No apology or anything. Whoever is in the car, we all got to get out. And I remember arguing with the police and being like, no, you can't do this. And I'm not doing nothing. And should we call a female officer? I don't give a what you call. Call whoever you want to call. And then my husband being in a position, the fear of a Black man with the police, not my husband at the time, but my boyfriend, who is now my husband, being a Black man facing the police, and me being a Black woman that's not going to be, like, you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm not going to give up my dignity, my humanness for you to treat me as if I'm not a citizen. And that's what Ella Baker talked about. Like, she talked about us maintaining our dignity, our citizenship, our very rights to being treated as a human in this country. And this is why I want people to read Ella Baker, because she said there's no way that Black people will ever maintain our humanity in this system of capitalism and imperialism. We will never have it. So that means everything That means when y'all keep talking about vote for the lesser of two evils, you can't do that in this system. It will never give you your liberation. It will only give you a longer leash. Ella Baker wasn't talking about that. So we talking about dismantling the system, and you got to be ready for that. You got to be ready to ride for that. But too many people don't want that. They only want a longer leash. They don't want to dismantle it. They don't want to abolish police forces. They don't want that because, oh my God, what happens to all the criminals? Well, what happens to all the criminals is that if you provide enough resources for people, I've never seen a person besides, let me be clear, and Dr. Tiffany Michelle Bellamy, if you on here, if you still on here, I want to send you this. If you on here, Tiff, give me a thumbs up. If you, Tiffany Michelle Bellamy, Dr. Tiffany Michelle Bellamy, if you still watching, give me a thumbs up. Besides being a sociopath or a psychopath, and I don't know the difference between the two on the nuance level, Dr. Tiff will have to speak to that, and anybody else that can speak to that, you can just share what the differences are. But outside of those two issues, having those issues, I've never met somebody who is well established, has everything going for them, don't have to worry about where they're going to get their next meal, sleeping comfortably in a bed. I've never known them to just be outside shooting folks for no reason. Aside from, as I said, aside from sociopath and psychopaths, you're going to always have that type of characteristic in society. You're going to always have that type of person in society. There's some wires that just don't get crossed. But for the most part, people don't just commit crime. I'm not talking about crime where they are domestic violence and they're abusers. I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about drug crime. I'm talking about violent crime just for no reason, shooting. Most crime in impoverished area has to do with the underground economy. And the underground economy is because those people cannot access the full economy. So if you could get on, not even just get a job. I'm not talking about getting a job. If you could get your certification and get involved in the union and not have barriers to being involved in the union as a carpenter, HVAC person, welder, bricklayer, plumbing, electrician, if you could get certified in that way and you could have your own business and get all the access to all the jobs that everybody else is getting, I don't see them outside shooting and killing and selling drugs. There are Chicago Cred, there's some other programs that can vouch for this as well. They get those people into those programs. They get unionized. They own it. Painters, everything. They leave the streets. They move out of that community. So thank you, Shelley. Sociopaths are more obvious and behaviorally out of pocket. Psychopaths are charismatic. Oh, Lord, don't we know some of them? Charismatic and manipulative, but do heinous stuff that people don't tend to expect. Wow. So aside from those people that's just out of pocket, you know, the ones that, that just be like, I slap the S out you because you don't speak back to them. They just malfunction Negroes. Like that's just what it is. But the insane amount of murders now, and not only is it because of lack to access to resources, now you're fueling that with all the other trauma that they have got to live with. So you don't know the PTSD that they're dealing with. You don't know what's happened to them as a child and ACEs, like all of that combined. Because we don't start questioning why people are acting out until they start acting out. We don't question what's happening in their childhood as they're being raised up. We don't pay attention to that. So we're so busy paying attention to the stores and the businesses that's being burnt down and burnt out, but we ain't paying attention to the systems that are taking families from people, taking parents away from children. Or what happens when the poverty and the crime leaves a child motherless or fatherless. or what happens when that child has to watch or be molested by somebody in their home and they're left. See, we don't want to deal with none of that. We just want you to stop burning down the companies. It's ridiculous. But we don't want to deal with what keeps. Why is it that on the same block, let's just say that in Chicago, the same block, in a high poverty area, that same, I'll give you more than that. I'll give you a 1 mile radius where you can have 50 children in a 1 mile radius, 50 children dealing with the lack of a parent in their home for whatever reason, whether that, and if that parent is present, is there but not present mentally, 50 children in a 1 mile radius. You can have 50 children who are exposed to lead, 1 mile radius in this city. You can have 50 children who have been displaced from their school and their friendships and that community of friends and circle of friends disrupted. And nobody ever says, let's send some counselors in to deal with this, because those young people are going to definitely have some issues around that. But we want to start talking about why they're downtown. They don't even care. They don't know nothing about what's going on with George Floyd. They just downtown tearing up shit. You damn right they downtown tearing up shit. Did you care about what they was going to tear up before, when they was 5 years old and the writing was on the wall that this was going to be where they were going to head to? Y'all, ACEs are huge. And if you don't know what ACEs are, you have to read. Again, this is public information. And I'm not judging you for not knowing, because most people wouldn't know. It's not common knowledge. But I'm just saying to you all, there are things that you shouldn't speak on. If you're curious, ask the question out of curiosity. Don't ask the question out of being facetious. If you really want to know, take some time to get educated. So then when you come to the conversation, you come in with solutions. Do we excuse things that destroy our community? No, ma'am, no, sir. But see, picking at Ella Baker said it best. She said when she was younger, I'm gonna post a video of her of one of the videos I saw of her. She said racism was rampant when she was a little girl, but she wasn't having it. It reminded me so much of myself when she said it. She said she wasn't having it, and a little boy called her the N-word. And I don't know if she slapped him or she punched him, but she did something. And this was her response whenever she was mistreated. And she said she began to understand that she couldn't really change anything if she just went around hitting one person at a time, or finding vindication, one incident and one person at a time. That she recognized it was a system that she had to fight against. And that's all I'm saying, y'all. We can point out little different things. What about when this person is in our community doing this? If you got to the system, a lot of the ills in our community would be stopped. If you got to the bottom of what the impetus is, if we got away from, and people don't like to hear the word white supremacy. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to. How do you fix white supremacy? How do you fix racism? I don't know how you fix racism or white supremacy, but I know you can take their damn hands off of the power structures. You could be a white supremacist all you want over there. I never come on your land. You can rule it till the cows come home. But in this public space where my children will attend school, where banks will give me loans, where I will have to get my food sources, you won't control that. So I don't need to eradicate how you feel about Black people. You can hate us all day long. You can eat and get full off of hating me. But what you cannot do is rule my life and rule the generations that follow me. And see, this goes back to the thing about the kind of freedom and the liberation we want to have. Because if we just want a longer leash for us, we only kicking the can down the field for the oppression that our grandchildren will face. And they will be right here like we are. The grandchildren of Dr. King and the grandchildren of Ella Baker and the grandchildren of Reverend Lowry will be right here again saying the same thing. They'll be facing the same thing because we are too busy questioning why we're pathological, why we have the problem with pathology, why we are killing each other, why we burning down stores. And they steady talking about how they gonna build and keep us in change and how they can tell us we ain't black because we don't want a longer leash. Vote for a lesser evil if you want to. That longer leash, you've got to dismantle this system. Ella Baker knew it. This system is built on capitalism. It's built on imperialism. It's not going to give it to you. Everything will crumble the day they give you your freedom. Do people not see that? This country will crumble the day black people take their freedom. So of course they're gonna tell you, you better vote for me. It's better than that one over there voting for me. It might be somewhat better, but I can tell you, I can tell you everything we facing right now. We were facing it 60 years ago. And worse. Keep on kicking the can down the field. Keep on voting for that longer leash. But one day we're gonna understand why it's liberation or nothing. See, when people say no justice, no peace, you got to understand it ain't about what you think it's about. The moment. It's not about the moment because the moment changes. All prayers and all condolences and heart goes out to George Floyd. But George Floyd will be the story of yesterday because tomorrow there'll be another one. And the thing about it is you need to realize, and I can realize, that it could be you or I, or our father, son, daughter, sister, mother, uncle, cousin. It can happen to anybody, any one of us. White supremacy doesn't hold us like we hold each other. We think, everybody want to have this exclusivity. Everybody want to be, you light skin, you dark skin, separation. You want to be, I'm rich, you poor, separation. I went to HBCU, you went to PWI, separation. I'm Greek, you ain't, separation. I live in this neighborhood, you live in that neighborhood, separation. We think, we the ones that think we got to one up on each other. And there's one equalizer. There's one thing put us all in our damn place. That damn knee on our neck. So y'all, I'm gonna go. I'm getting hungry. And we've been at it for an hour and 40 minutes. I pray that whatever books I shared, that you all will read them. If you have any recommendations for me, I'm a reader. I love reading. If I could do nothing else but sit on my couch and read all day, I would. So please make your suggestions. And I will even, with that, I'll even make a list of books that we can read. But freedom, y'all, the handbook for our freedom has already been written. The ancestors wrote it in their autobiographies. They wrote it, and some of them wrote 5, 6 books. Stokely Carmichael, Kwame Ture, under both names, he wrote so many books. Dr. King wrote so many books. The blueprint is already there. So we don't have to question why things are, because they give us the answer. And at the end of the day, the answer goes back to that leash. So liberation is not pretty. Liberation calls for some dismantling. Liberation calls for some death. Death in many forms. Death in the human form. Death in the mind, death in systems. And I know people are afraid of death, and death is supposed to be this ugly, bad thing. We grieve and we mourn for death. And the Bible talks a lot about death, but one thing that the Bible and the Quran talk about is death is there to teach us a lesson. So we sometimes, I think on my granny, rest her soul, Wilda Corrine Reed Thompson Reed. I love my granny so much. I love my granny. But my granny wasn't living a life that was, my granny was very sick and very ill. And as much as it pains me not to have my granny with me, and as much as it pained me to sit there with her as she was dying, one thing I know is death was a release for her. It was a release. She don't feel no pain where she is. And so when we let go of these systems, as much as we think we're in a country where we can cuss out the president on Twitter and we think that's freedom, and as much as we think, because we can buy a house, and fill it up with pretty nice furniture and things from IKEA, and as much as we can order on Amazon all we want, and go and get some degrees and get some nice jobs, as much as we can do all of that, there's even sweeter, a better side to life, real freedom, where we could just, have you seen white people? Have you seen them? I mean, not a care in the world. You hear me? They don't have to worry about are they sure they put their turn signal on because they're getting over in the lane. They don't have to worry about how many people they got in the car with them that are black males, or how many young people are in the car. They don't have to worry about what side of town they on after a certain time of night. They don't have to worry about those kind of things. Life is just, they don't have to worry about going through the airport, getting their hair all pulled into and lifted up and looked into. They don't got to worry about none of that. You deserve that kind of life. You deserve a life that says you don't got to fight for your children to have education, that you don't have to take them out of knowing who they are and place them in a white school where they are susceptible to being discriminated and traumatized by racial hate, in order for them to just learn, not even real history or anything, but just to learn basic instruction like math and science, things that race can't even control, right? Just to get that kind of education, you got to take your kids and put them in harm's way. That shouldn't be. I don't want that kind of liberation. And my kids are in college. So this ain't about me and my kids. It can't be about you or your kids. I want you to dream of the world you want for your great-grandchildren. And just like Dr. King, and just like Harriet Tubman, and just like Nat Turner, and just like all of the people that were here in 1619, all of the things that when they fought for liberation, I'm talking about the people that were fighting and living, and they weren't resistors. Whatever they did it. They knew that they may never see freedom. They knew it. But they were hoping that their great-grandchildren or their children wouldn't be born into bondage. So I'm telling us, are we still planning to have our children born into bondage just because it's the lesser evil? All right, y'all, I'm gone for the night. Peace. I love everybody. If you are concerned about protesters and why they're doing whatever they're doing, I would love for you. I'm going to invite you to do something. Energy and vibrations are real, and people can get caught up in that frequency. So I'm going to invite you to unplug, turn away from it. You don't even have to look at it. It's okay. It doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean that you ain't for the cause, because your psyche is worse off if you are consumed with this and it's causing you so much despair to watch it. It's okay to turn away from it. Get you some music, get you a good movie to laugh about, read a good book. Go in your garden and plant something and watch it grow every day. You'd be amazed what I found with gardening, just watching something that I planted grow and giving life to something. It's like a mama with a baby in her belly, just mesmerized with every day this feeling, this little thing is growing and kicking. So try that. Try to go cook you make something, bake something. I don't know, crochet something. Turn away from whatever it is that's got you so irritated and agitated, worrying about actions you can't do nothing about. You can't do nothing about what protesters are doing. So turn away from it. Turn within and worry and try to focus on what can I do and dream of the world you want to see for your great-grandchildren, and then think about what you can do to create that world. And when I say your great-grandchildren, I don't mean just the grandchildren of your own loins and your own flesh and blood, but the great-grandchildren and the children they will sit in the classroom with, or at this point, we don't know if they'll be in a classroom, but who they will have to share this world with. What kind of world are you going to create for those, for all of our babies of the future? That's where my head is right now. And when it gets to be too much, and I think people are being foolish, or people are, and Facebook was great for me during the first weeks of COVID. Oh, I was snoozing people. Like, if you don't hear every day, you got a report for how many people dying. Guess what? Snooze. Before that, when people want to tell you every day how many people got murdered and shot, guess what? I don't pay attention to that. And I've never, to this day, sat and watched that orange fool in the White House say a word. I've never watched it, and I refuse to. Only time I know what he's saying is one of y'all retweeted or posted on Facebook. I'm not giving him my energy. Why? I can do nothing to stop him. But you know who can do something to stop him? And this takes me, I'm going back into this again. I'm so sorry. I personally believe that everybody who's saying vote for this lesser evil, the lesser evil, and I'm not speaking of the person, I'm talking about the system, the lesser evil system. If they really wanted to, you know, do you all know that in Africa and other countries they have coups all day? They have these coups almost every election. They do. So nobody has to stay in office that the people don't want in office. They remove them. Most times, let me be clear though, most times it's America that's funding the coups and setting it up and trying to maintain their own power in the country. But nonetheless, the point is they don't keep anybody in power to run their countries that they don't want. So the fact that this man is still there tells me they are just fine with him being there. Because whenever, he never even had to step foot into that White House. He never had to take a residency there. He could have been impeached. He could be in jail. All of those. So to me, it's a crock of, you know what? And I refuse to give him my energy or my vote. Moving on, I'm going to share some of your thoughts. I did say we was leaving, y'all. Thank y'all for hanging in here with me. But my girl Nick says, just as you can divorce war from politics, you can't separate the fight for freedom and liberation from the protest. And her name on here is Willa Cather. So y'all need to learn who that person is too. Willa Cather. Look her up. Willa, Cather. Read about her. Don, I dream of that world too, where these tragedies don't happen. Yep, because that's the only kind of world we can dream of if we want change. And we can't think of change being just a little bit of change and just enough to, I just don't know how just enough became enough for us. That's what I don't understand. When did just enough become enough? When we get satisfied with just enough? I want it all. All or nothing. That's me. All right, y'all. Thank you again. I so appreciate you watching, and we'll tune in. I'll be back again. I don't know when, but we'll see. All right, y'all. Peace.